Hello everyone. Today Panda Tale would like to introduce you to a lovely ancient romance story. Synopsis: my husband is the crown prince. He pretended to have amnesia and worked as a butcher, living an ordinary married life with me in a small village. I overheard a conversation between him and his shadow guard. Miss Cloud saved your highness's life and is deeply infatuated with you. When you ascend the throne, should we make her a concubine? Alexander coldly said. This type of crude village woman, I absolutely cannot bring her back to the Eastern Palace. She and I were merely a brief romance. Giving her 1,000 taels of gold is already great mercy. I eavesdropped behind the door panel and almost laughed out loud. He doesn't know I'm a reborn soul. This money will eventually come to me anyway. Please listen to the story. Recently, that shadow guard has been coming very frequently. Each time, Alexander deliberately cruelly torments me on the bed. It's as if I have the endless strength of an ox. Only when I'm exhausted and fall asleep does he gently put on his cloak and tiptoe out of the room. Today was the same. Could it be that his return to the palace is already near? I deliberately paid attention. When Alexander stood up, I quietly approached the door. Outside, he had his back to me, talking with the shadow guard. I held my breath and listened. Your Highness's return date is getting closer. This Miss Cloud, how do you intend to handle her? Hearing this, I suddenly felt a bit tense. Alexander was silent. The shadow guard spoke again. After all, it was Miss Cloud who saved you before, and she's deeply infatuated with you. If you have feelings for her, making her a concubine in the future wouldn't be a problem. Only then did Alexander speak, his tone extremely bland. Sophia Cloud is violent and fierce by nature, crude and despicable to the extreme. How could I possibly bring such a crude woman back to the palace? She and I were originally just a brief romance. I'm giving her 1,000 taels of gold, which is already great mercy. Alexander's silhouette made it impossible for me to see his expression clearly. I only saw the shadow guard shaking his head in the moonlight, as if pitying me. At this moment, the rest of their words all turned into nothingness. In my ears, only the 4 words, 1,000 taels of gold, echoed loudly. I suppressed the corners of my mouth that were wildly turning up, held back my laughter, and lay back on the bed. Alexander still had no idea I was reborn. From the beginning, I knew he was a big liar. Before my rebirth, the person who found him wasn't me, but Rose Wang from the same village. One day, Rose went out to gather herbs and found a handsome young man at the village entrance, causing a stir in the whole village. Rose had an ugly appearance, but when choosing a husband, she valued looks the most, so she had delayed marriage. She fell for Alexander at first sight and was determined to marry him. The night before the wedding, I advised Rose to think carefully. A man needs real ability, not just a pretty face. Unexpectedly, I was fiercely scolded. The day Alexander returned to the palace with his jade crown held high and brocade robes, 10,000 soldiers knelt to welcome him. The village roads were congested. The villagers had never seen such a scene before and were all terrified. Only then did I realize that the man Rose had found was actually His Highness the Crown Prince. Alexander, high above, had always pretended to have amnesia. It was just an excuse to hide his true identity. He deliberately hid in this remote small village to conceal his strength and secretly plot. Now he had become the final victor in the struggle for the throne. When Alexander passed by Rose, he was extremely heartless. His robe hem swept past without even glancing at her. From then on, Rose was obsessed with becoming the crown princess. She held the treasures Alexander had given her, crying all day saying she didn't need money, just wanted to be his crown princess. She became somewhat deranged. I thought about it 100 times, but couldn't understand what there was to cry about. If it were me, I would definitely have thoroughly enjoyed that future emperor. Slept with him to my heart's content. When he returned to the palace, I would rely on mountains of gold and silver for the rest of my life, eating without worry, no loss at all. Unexpectedly, 1 year after Alexander ascended the throne, a plague broke out in the village. People fell ill and died. I couldn't escape this misfortune either. Before my last breath, Alexander's cold face appeared in my mind again. It really made me jealous to death. That was 1,000 taels of gold. If I had luck like roses, at least I could change my current fate. I thought my mediocre life had ended. When I opened my eyes again, I had actually been reborn. This time, I didn't say a word and rushed straight to the village gate. For no other reason than to find Alexander before Rose. Every day I dressed up gorgeously, waiting by the stream for half a month, hoping day and night. Finally, I found Alexander covered in wounds appearing. Before he could faint, I immediately showed a bright smile, stepped forward steadily to support him. Who are you? Where is this? Alexander, though weak, was still very vigilant. He held his sword to my throat, forbidding me from advancing. But I paid no attention, raising my voice and pretending to be coy. Sir, I'm here to save you. I didn't let Alexander struggle, and in one breath carried half his body, dragging and pulling him home. On the way back, I ignored his painful groans. I was ecstatic. This huge fortune would finally be mine. When Alexander woke up again, fate had completely changed. This time he was lying in my house. Before Alexander were medicines for whip wounds, medicines for falls, medicines for blade wounds, medicines for bruises. These were all things I had prepared early for Alexander. I had bought all kinds of miraculous medicines available on the market in advance, only afraid I couldn't cure Alexander. I waved my hand very generously. Sir, why were you injured like this? I'll cure you. Alexander's expression was strange. He hesitated before reaching for the wound medicine. This time, he also lied about having amnesia just like before. Seeing everything about to follow the original trajectory of fate, I didn't expose Alexander but played along. After keeping him at home for a while, we got married. After marriage, I treated Alexander even better. Not only because he was my money tree, but also because he was the crown prince of the Eastern Palace, the future emperor. If I didn't take good care of him now and made him angry, let alone money, even my dog's life would be hard to keep. Every day when Alexander went to the market to sell pork, I would carry a food basket and walk far over many mountain paths to bring him water and meals. No matter what time he came home, I would hold a lamp and quietly wait at the village entrance. Everyone said the jade-faced butcher in Lotus Village had a good wife, thinking I was crazy in love with him. Even Alexander himself thought so. However, thanks to Alexander's luck, the pork business prospered quite well. With his handsome face, many young ladies came just to hear his reputation. They would buy half a caddy of meat just to secretly glimpse Butcher Alexander's face. Their faces red with shyness, then turning to regret when they saw me. But they didn't know these small coins meant nothing to me. I counted on my fingers, growing more excited the more I thought about it. This day finally came. But many days passed, and I waited and waited without any news of Alexander returning to the palace. What are you thinking about? Alexander put down his chopsticks and silently looked at me. I coughed lightly, suddenly feeling a bit guilty. I'm thinking of you. I accepted his gaze without hesitation, pursing my lips. Alexander slightly raised his eyebrows. I'm right in front of you. What are you thinking of me for? More and more young ladies are coming to the shop to buy meat. What if one day you get fed up with me for being crude and illiterate and abandon me? I pretended to be upset while eating properly. Eat properly. Stop talking nonsense all day. He scolded me lightly. I laughed coldly inside. This wasn't nonsense at all. Weren't these the words from His Highness the Crown Prince's own mouth a few days ago? You're the one talking nonsense. We've been married so long. You've only called me wife a few times I can count on my fingers. If I call you wife, will you eat properly? Alexander looked at me somewhat seriously. He stood up and picked up more food for me. His elegant eyebrows lowered very naturally as he called out, wife. Clearly he despised me so much in his heart, yet he still had to act with me daily. How pitiful for him. I sweetly responded, wise. What's worth celebrating is that these days of mutual acting are about to end. After dinner, Alexander sat on the edge of the bed and suddenly stretched out his hand. He spread his palm open. Inside was a pearl hairpin. The hairpin seemed to have faint patterns, I curiously took it. Alexander spoke, "For you." Seeing my confused look, he turned his face away, not showing his expression. "A new jewelry shop opened in town today. I saw many young ladies buying this style, thought you'd like it too." Inside I was disgusted to death, but outwardly I pretended to be delighted and surprised. "How did you know I liked this style?" I suddenly hugged his neck, smiling brightly, and kissed him with a smack. "Husband, you're so good to me." Alexander's eyes flickered slightly. He grabbed my wrist, pulled me close, and covered my lips. The moment he lifted the bed curtain, I hazily thought men were really easy to deceive. Early the next morning, noise and commotion sounded outside. Someone shouted, "Stop sleeping. Something's happened." "What's with all the soldiers at the village gate?" I hurriedly got up, hugging the blanket. Alexander beside me had already disappeared. My drowsiness instantly vanished. Just stepping into the courtyard, I saw Alexander wearing slate-colored robes standing with arms crossed at our door. The villagers knelt prostrate on the ground. Several men in official dress hurried forward to Alexander and knelt with a thud. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this servant is late." "Finally here. Why did you only come now?" I was so excited my eyes turned red, putting on a look of being frightened, and said, "Husband, who are they?" The man in purple robes kneeling on the ground shouted loudly at me, "Who are you?" Seeing His Highness the Crown Prince and still not kneeling. "Crown Prince." I softly knelt down, lips trembling, tears rolling down my cheeks. Alexander stood there just watching me. He stood straight but remained silent. After a long while, from his throat finally came the words I desperately hoped for. "The Jew family has merit in saving me. 3,000 taels of gold." With that, Alexander swept past me. While he paused briefly, I wiped dry my tears and snot, extremely tragically shouting loudly, "Thank you for your Highness the Crown Prince's grace." I stood up, placed the heavy tray of gold aside, then pulled from my sleeve the simple hairpin he gave me yesterday, and ran to the stream in front of the house. "Sophia Cloud." Alexander called my name somewhat frantically from behind. He actually chased after me. I was startled and at the same time raised my hand high, throwing the hairpin into the stream. The hairpin only created a small ripple on the water surface before sinking to the bottom in an instant. I smiled faintly. "From now on, we two have nothing to do with each other." My words made Alexander freeze in place. The surroundings fell into an eerie silence. Perhaps sensing Alexander's anger, everyone knelt prostrate on the ground, carefully bowing their heads, not daring to look around. But if they raised their heads, they would see His Highness the Crown Prince in a haggard state, having lost all bearing. Alexander's eyes were bloodshot, fiercely staring at where the hairpin disappeared, trying hard to hide his trembling hands under his sleeves. I wiped my tears while thinking to myself, His Highness the Crown Prince truly lives up to being a dragon among men, acting to the point of deceiving even himself. What a pity he doesn't know I once witnessed Rose's ending with my own eyes, carelessly abandoned. As long as there's even a slight possibility of being used and discarded, I would never allow myself to gamble. Moreover, I heard with my own ears how he evaluated me. Rather than trusting in a man's fickle feelings, better to trust in gold. Besides, I truly hated that hairpin and had wanted to throw it away for a long time. I just endured until today. After a long while, that person's face showed a cold, dark expression. Not knowing if mocking himself or what, he laughed lightly. "Very well." This time, Alexander didn't look back again. Watching that large procession of people and horses leave the village, getting farther and farther away, I rushed to the pile of gold ingots, picked one up, brought it to my mouth and bit down hard. So painful, but so fragrant. The villagers beside me looked at me laughing foolishly with frightened expressions. They thought I was abandoned so tragically that extreme sorrow led to these mad actions. For a moment, everyone looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Actually, coming back to life this time and receiving this money, I had one more thing I wanted to do. Though I didn't know if it was feasible, after thinking it over, I still decided to try. I quickly wiped my tears dry, stood among the villagers and asked everyone to gather. Fellow villagers, Sophia has a few words to say. My husband is the crown prince. After returning to the palace, he will inevitably remember the difficult days in Lotus Village. Everyone present understood my meaning. After all, people's hearts are hard to predict. No one dares be certain whether Alexander might one day want to erase memories of his miserable time in Lotus Village or not. Someone as cold as him, it's not impossible. I wanted to use this excuse to drive the villagers away. Sure enough, everyone whispered and discussed, unable to help talking with mouths and 10 tongues. Oh dear, what should we do? We've lived here for generations. If we move, we might lose our lives. Still worrying about this when your life is almost gone. Seeing the timing was right, I slowly spoke. Since I picked up my husband, naturally I must take responsibility to the end. So for villagers who move away within 2 days, Sophia will pay all moving expenses out of Lotus Village and support everyone's future stable life. As soon as these words came out, one exclaimed, "Great! Sophia, are your words true? Is there really such a good thing?" I nodded. Seeing more and more villagers eagerly signing up, I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. From childhood, I had no father or mother, growing up thanks to the care of Lotus Village folks. If I have a chance to live again, naturally I want to do what I can to help everyone. Thus, the burden in my heart was finally put down. The villagers' problems were resolved. Now only one issue remained. I looked toward Rose beside me. She was sitting on the ground crying inconsolably. I don't want to leave. I also want a handsome man as my husband, preferably more handsome than His Highness the Crown Prince. The corner of my mouth twitched. She and I were both orphans with no relatives to rely on. Thinking of her tragic ending before my rebirth, plus her current state, even with money she'd inevitably be deceived by some wicked man. I squatted down to wipe her tears and asked, "I'll take you to a good place. Do you want to come with me?" She raised her head, eyes full of tears, confused. "Where can we find men there? One-track mind." As the last to leave, I burned this place to ashes. Before getting on the carriage, I looked at Lotus Village that had turned into ruins, as if completely bidding farewell to the painful memories of my previous life. It felt incredibly refreshing. This time, no one would die from plague. Everyone would have money to live good lives. "That good place you mentioned the other day, where exactly is it?" Rose asked. I curved my lips, lifted the carriage curtain and answered, "The capital." This was another intention of mine when accepting the money. Once I get this money, I'll leave here for the safest place where I can earn the most money. The capital is prosperous with infinite opportunities. Most importantly, I don't want to be like my previous life, never stepping out of that small village until death. The carriage gradually went far. But I didn't know that 3 days later, a group of people in black clothes came to Lotus Village. Only their leader wore blue clothes. One could vaguely see his handsome, noble features. He saw the village had long been empty, leaving only broken walls and ruins. His body trembled slightly, but he didn't say a word. Several people in black searched along the small stream, as if looking for something, but came up empty-handed in the end. Only the young master in blue, when preparing to mount his horse, suddenly collapsed to the ground. Looking closely, he actually vomited a mouthful of blood. Just when the new emperor ascended the throne, an embroidery shop called Cloud Garments suddenly appeared in the capital. As soon as it opened, the embroidery shop boldly posted notices everywhere recruiting poor, helpless women to work. The shop not only provided food and lodging but also taught embroidery skills. After mastering the craft, they could stay at the shop for long-term work. Once this announcement came out, the capital's common people discussed it heatedly, all thinking it was a scam. However, after just half a year, Cloud Garments became famous throughout the imperial capital. Thanks to gold thread embroidery techniques, the shop had countless rich embroidery styles with novel designs, attracting numerous noble ladies of the capital to compete in coming to buy. Legend said the shop owner was a woman surnamed Wang who often covered her face with a thin veil, very mysterious. "Miss Sophia, clearly you're the shop owner, so why let Miss Wang represent you?" The Left Chancellor's daughter Victoria was selecting embroidery in the shop, chatting idly with me. I smiled without speaking. As soon as I arrived in the capital, I opened Cloud Garments and bought a large house. Rose, understanding pharmacology, also opened a medicine shop next to Cloud Garments. We also hired a teacher to teach. The main reason was that through our own efforts, each person's small business gradually prospered to what it is today. But after all, this was Alexander's territory. To be cautious, I still let Rose represent me as Cloud Garments' owner in public. Suddenly she remembered something. Oh right, the other day when I attended a palace banquet with Father, I presented to His Majesty that bird and flower screen you embroidered. My fingers tapping the table calculating suddenly stopped. He saw the character Cloud you embroidered, knocked over his wine cup, suddenly coughed very violently, and asked me many strange questions. He asked me who embroidered this screen. When I was still with Alexander, every time he tore his clothes and I mended them for him, I would embroider a character Cloud near the chest of his clothes, delicately expressing feelings. In name, it was a protective charm for him. I thought Alexander never paid attention to such details. But thinking again, this young lady's name also had the character Cloud, inevitably giving rise to some luck. I pretended to be casual and asked, "So how did you answer?" I said. Her expression suddenly became serious. I said I embroidered it. Thanks to that, I received first-class rewards. Also thanks to your skillful hands, my father praised my great progress. Miss Sophia, considering you've helped me so much, in a few days can you come to a banquet at my mansion? She giggled again with a bright smile. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief and smiled in response. Suddenly I heard her mysteriously say, "Everyone says the new emperor is ruthlessly decisive and extraordinarily handsome. Since ascending the throne, the empress position remains empty. So all the court officials are trying hard to send young ladies into the palace. But I don't want to, because he has a strange illness." I frowned. Alexander's body had muscles that felt hard as stone when touched, clearly very healthy. How could he have a strange illness? Father secretly told me His Majesty has rapid heartbeat disease. Perhaps it's after effects from his time wandering among the people. After she left, I was still dazed. Why did Alexander's reaction seem off? I could only comfort myself that old matter was long past. Alexander surely wouldn't descend to this state. Now he's the son of heaven. Whatever woman he wants is just a matter of moments. He must have long forgotten a country village woman like me. But I didn't expect Alexander to be such a vengeful person. In the evening, an embroiderer hurriedly ran from the front hall. "Sister Sophia, sister, come quickly. There's an important guest." Looking at the attire, seems like from the palace. My heart thumped. Thinking over and over, I always felt the visitor had no good intentions, so I calmly instructed, "Just stall there. Quickly go to the clinic to call Rose back." In the main hall, Alexander stood tall and straight, his dark eyes and thin lips slightly curved, making it impossible to guess his current mood. Though wearing ordinary clothes, anyone could recognize his extraordinary bearing. That oppressive aura wasn't something ordinary palace people could possess. Rose naturally also recognized Alexander's identity. She sat in the host's position, trying hard to stay calm, looking at this extraordinarily handsome young master who must be wealthy and powerful. "Coming to our small shop twice, what business do you have? If it's to place an order, then you still need to." Before she could finish, Alexander slightly lifted his chin. Two guards following him actually directly lifted up the bird and flower screen Victoria had given. Rose didn't know what this was, widening her eyes in surprise. "Young master, what do you mean? Stop acting. I know you're from Lotus Village." His expression was bland as he pulled out an exquisite dagger from his waist, slowly appreciating it. "I came to find someone." Looking at the cold glint flashing in Alexander's eyes, he pressed the dagger against Rose's throat. Rose swallowed hard with difficulty, trembling as she asked, "Who does your majesty want to find?" "My wife Sophia." Alexander suppressed his anger, his eyes almost blood red. His whole body radiated madness. I hid behind the screen, not knowing when sweat had soaked through my clothes. Not good. Alexander coming here today definitely had to do with that pair of bird and flower screens. He also wasn't normal. Continuing like this, I'm afraid Rose and I would die here today. Though I didn't know why he was looking for me, I had to face him. I took a deep breath, stood up, leisurely walked around from behind the screen, then extremely properly knelt down. I respectfully bowed my head, both hands on the ground, kowtowing once to Alexander. Commoner woman Sophia greets your majesty. The others had quietly withdrawn. I knelt on the ground, not daring to say another word. Alexander mockingly said, Sophia, don't think I can't see through your thoughts. You think just by kneeling like this, our days together in Lotus Village can be treated as if they never existed. I searched for you for a long time. Who knew you were right in the capital? His voice was hoarse. This time I came to talk things through with you clearly. I felt like I'd heard a ridiculous joke, doubting if Alexander had gone mad. Did he think I was stupid? If I told the truth and he got angry and beheaded me, what then? I respectfully and frankly refused. This commoner woman dares not. Alexander frowned. You think I'll kill you? Until this moment, my complete distrust of him was finally fully exposed. He quickly walked to the table, swung his brush to write something, and gave me the paper. This imperial edict can guarantee you and Cloud Garments peace for life. This time you should trust me, right? Only then did I feel at ease to tuck it into my bosom. Gathering all my courage, I answered, Your Majesty, I asked myself, I treated you very well. I thought I could exchange for some of your true feelings. But you looked down on me, despised me. If it were you, would you trust someone so heartless and ungrateful? He seemed extremely shocked that I said I despised him. When did I ever despise you? Sophia is violent and fierce, crude and despicable to the extreme. You and I were originally just a brief romance. I'm giving you 1,000 taels of gold, which is already great mercy. I looked straight into Alexander's eyes, repeating his words from years ago word for word. Actually, even if you didn't say it, I never thought about entering the palace. Even if I became empress, so what? How long can an emperor's love last? I don't care for it. Oh, right? I forgot to tell you. That day I threw away that hairpin not because of heartbreak, just because it was made of silver and I like gold. Alexander frowned, leaning on the table, clutching his chest. So in your heart, I'm not even worth 1,000 taels of gold. Sophia, have you ever had feelings for me or not? I honestly answered him. That winter when I was on the road looking for you and fell into Mountain Valley, you desperately searched for me, digging until your 10 fingers bled. I was moved. It's just that kind of feeling I didn't dare trust. Alexander didn't know I started reading and studying not because I cared about his evaluation, but because I felt people should always look forward. If I decided to devote myself to Cloud Garments, I couldn't just be a woman who only knew how to work an abacus. Only by working hard back then could I have confidence to support Cloud Garments. I stared at Alexander's contemplative expression and slowly said, after reading books, I understood better that these 4 words, romance of wind, flowers, snow and moon, don't just exist in romantic love between men and women, but can also exist in ambitions. Alexander, you've read more books than me. Why can't you understand the principle of letting go? The 2 words, letting go, created enormous stimulation for Alexander. His eyelashes trembled. He suddenly covered his mouth, abruptly turned around and coughed violently. At the same time, his other hand gripped the table edge tightly, trying to steady his body. He seemed to want to say something, but suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood from his mouth, splattering all over his chest. Alexander fell backward onto the ground, closing his eyes as if he'd lost consciousness. Witnessing this scene with my own eyes, I finally knew Alexander's strange illness was like this. The scene was truly somewhat overwhelming, but the words had been spoken. With my understanding of him, afterwards he probably wouldn't bother me again. I quickly pushed Alexander out of my mind and focused all my attention on the Left Chancellor's birthday banquet. For no other reason, Cloud Garments had gained some reputation among noble ladies and imperial clan recently, But that still wasn't enough. As long as I made good use of this opportunity, cloud garments could enter the entire imperial clan's view. On the birthday banquet day, I attended as Victoria's close friend. I arrived early, but just entering the door, I already saw Alexander sitting in the center. He quickly discovered me. I thought to myself, what a coincidence. Our eyes met. I calmly looked away and walked straight to my seat. After several cups of wine, the atmosphere was very lively. When it came time to present birthday gifts, I took out the carefully prepared birthday present. Instantly, everyone in the courtyard turned their eyes toward me. I heard Lord Yin is honest and upright, doesn't like ostentation or waste. This commoner woman brought some exquisite items from Cloud Garments. I slowly unfolded what was in my hands. It was Cloud Garments 4-sided embroidery. The left chancellor didn't understand. Normally one only hears of 2-sided embroidery. How should this 4-sided embroidery be explained? I smiled, stepped into the middle of the courtyard, first displayed the front side of the sachet, then flipped it over. These are 2 sides. Then I held the sachet high toward the sunlight. The fortune and longevity pattern that was originally visible under the sunlight suddenly disappeared, replaced by the azure's longevity pattern. The inner embroidery layer had delicate needle and thread work, even more dazzling and magnificent. I bowed and spoke loudly, wishing your lordship physical and mental well-being, complete fortune and longevity. Rarely seen. Good, very good. The left chancellor was overjoyed. I was secretly delighted. Today's matter was considered accomplished. Who knew Alexander, sitting in the highest position, suddenly spoke up, his heated gaze sweeping across my face. I also find this sachet extremely thoughtful. Even better than the palace craftsman. It should be rewarded. With that, in the middle of the courtyard, someone unknown led the applause. Cheers and praise rang out all around. After the banquet ended, I was about to leave when a man in luxurious dress blocked me. He naturally approached and began introducing himself. Young lady, you must know who I am. I'm Lord Chen's noble son. I had no idea who he was, but out of politeness, I still smiled and shook my head. You're so clever and beautiful, yet just lingering around sewing and embroidery. What a great pity. Why not follow me? I'll take care of your business matters in the future, he said while trying to wrap his arm around my waist. I couldn't dodge in time and had to let him embrace me. Suddenly a sharp scream rang out. He was kicked from behind and fell flat on the ground. Who the fuck dares? Your Majesty. His expression changed from anger to terror. Alexander's feet stepped on the man's hand that had just touched me. He casually drew a guard's sword and with a raised hand, the man's official hat was knocked off by Alexander. His disheveled hair flew about, more than half cut off by Alexander. The man lowered his eyes coldly, saying, I didn't expect a lowly servant like you would dare rely on power to act recklessly. With no expression, Alexander gradually increased the force on his foot, as if wanting to crush the man's hand. I turned to leave. Alexander suddenly forcefully grabbed my wrist, pulling me in the opposite direction. He didn't say a word until he led me around a fake mountain, then questioned. Every time you see me, you wear this expression. Yet with worthless trash like him, you can smile. I was too lazy to argue with him, but my silence made Alexander extremely angry, jealous to the point of madness. What did you two talk about? Did he flirt with you? Or does he want to marry you? Do you know that Lord Chen's son keeps 8 concubines outside and is romantically frivolous? Why can even he do it but not me? Why can his dirty hands touch you? He spoke urgently, his face revealing some stubbornness. I'm wealthier than him, only have you as my one woman, and am much cleaner than him. Alexander suddenly grabbed the sword and stuffed it into my hand. His eyes were bloodshot as he gripped the sword tip tightly, pointing it straight at his chest. Sophia, I beg you not to hate me. If you really hate me that much, then use one sword strike to kill me. I cut him off, looking at him incredulously. Alexander, do you still remember who you are? Have you gone mad? He lowered his head and laughed softly. You're right. Perhaps from the day I remembered my past life, I've been mad. The 2 words, past life, made my breath catch. Alexander continued questioning. Sophia, answer me honestly. You always insist I'm heartless and unfeeling, unwilling to trust me. Is it because of Miss Wang? I was secretly shocked. How did he know? Could Alexander also be reborn? Alexander once fell from a horse. When he woke up, he had an extra set of strange memories. I suddenly understood why the day I was injured, as soon as I arrived at the village entrance I met you. Why you had medicine already prepared. Along with every moment we spent together. I thought you treated me so well, because you also had feelings for me. Turns out I was wrong from the beginning. My heart began to feel uneasy. Alexander not only knew about the past life but also guessed the real reason I saved him. But he wasn't angry at all. In my past life, I made it clear early on that I had a different identity. At the same time, I made an agreement with Miss Wang that when I recovered, I would thank her with wealth. The marriage was fake. Staying in Lotus Village to recuperate was real. I had no feelings for her and never touched her. In my past life, I naturally didn't know he and Rose had such a connection. This was indeed one reason I was certain Alexander was unfaithful. Every time he did something for me, I unconsciously thought it wasn't sincere but him hiding the truth. This made me speechless, not knowing how to answer. Alexander's voice was bitter. That shadow guard wasn't my person. Father Emperor sent him many times to probe me. I pretended to be cold to you, saying cruel words, also to dispel Father Emperor's suspicions. I was afraid after I left, he would pursue and exterminate. I once thought if I could ascend the throne early, I would bring you to the palace early. But that day you said you didn't care for my love, the hairpin mother consort left for me, power and status I can give you, but you don't care for any of it. What about money then? I've lost everything. This is all I have. I seem to have seen many appearances of Alexander, the ambitious Alexander, Alexander by my side day and night, and Alexander waving his sleeves and leaving. Though varied in form, all within my predictions, making it easy for me to guard against. But the Alexander before me had clearly personally broken all my predictions about him. Him like this made me feel confused for the first time. He earnestly and humbly said, Sophia, can you trust me one more time? I lowered my eyes without answering. Perhaps I needed some time to think thoroughly. 3 days later would be the prosperous capital's Lantern Festival. Thanks to planning from the Left Chancellor's birthday banquet, Cloud Garments' business became even more bustling. And I, holding a newly embroidered golden Rui lantern, stood at the place I'd arranged to meet Alexander. On the bridge, people came and went bustlingly. Everyone wore various masks on their faces, holding different lanterns in their hands. Under the bridge were thousands of lotus lanterns, reflecting on the lake surface, drifting with the waves like glittering stars pouring down from the Milky Way. Only one person wearing a black mask went against the flow of people walking over. Under the moonlight, he also held a gold ingot-shaped lantern embroidered by Cloud Garments. The plump, round-bellied gold ingot lantern was adorably silly. But somehow, among the other handicraft lanterns from the embroidery shop that had all sold out, only the gold ingot lantern I loved most had only sold 2 or 3 pieces, becoming the slowest selling item this batch. Initially I was worried, but a few days ago a kind customer suddenly appeared and bought all the remaining gold ingot lanterns. I naturally knew clearly who that person was. The tall man wearing the black mask walked lightly, seeming in a very good mood. He stopped gently beside me, then pretended to walk forward. I pretended not to recognize him, calmly looking away. As expected, Alexander appeared before me again. After going back and forth several times, seeing I had no reaction, he couldn't help but eagerly take the initiative to flip up his mask. You really don't recognize me? He frowned and asked. I wanted to laugh but still seriously nodded. Alexander was rendered speechless by me, but he quickly adjusted his emotions. It's fine. Next year I'll give you another chance. If you still don't recognize me next year, then the year after that. Like this, year after year, eventually you'll recognize me. He relaxed his expression, full of anticipation. What did you ask to meet me to talk about? I naturally knew what he was expecting. I also took off the rabbit mask from my face, gripping the lantern handle tighter and tighter. Alexander, I've thought it through. Actually, there were many misunderstandings between us before. But since you're willing to open your heart and confide, there are words I don't want to hide from you. I don't hate you. I was once moved by you. I'm also not afraid to trust you one more time. The corners of his eyes flashed with joy. I sighed and continued. But I also have what I desire more. If the price of being with you is giving up cloud garments and freedom, I don't think I can do it. The 9-foot palace walls and imperial household would all be golden shackles binding me. Even if such a life was wealthier, I wouldn't be happier than now. I still prefer being a small money, obsessed person, fiddling with the gold embroidery threads I love most. When I earn more money, I'll do things I like again. Or when free, I'll go see the beautiful scenery of heaven and earth. My heart is very clear, this is the life I want. Alexander, I'm sorry. After saying these words, I felt like a burden was lifted. I bowed and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, that person behind me grabbed me once again, embracing me. He used his other hand to lift my mask, lowering his eyes to seriously look at me. Tying hair and weaving silk, husband and wife walking together. We already paid respects to heaven and earth at the mountain god temple in Lotus Village. Alexander brushed his fingers across my lips, then a warm kiss pressed down. You don't want to enter the palace. Fine. I always have a way. But Sophia, don't think you can drive me away like this. The new year was approaching. Cloud Garments had already opened its third branch in the capital. I was too busy alone and had to hand over to 2 other excellent seamstresses. That day, heavy snow fell in the prosperous capital. Since our previous conversation, Alexander seemed even more willful. Whenever free, he would run to my place. He said if I didn't want to enter the palace, then he would leave the palace to come see me. That was the method he thought of. What made me hesitate most was that every time he came to see me, he brought all kinds of precious jewels to coax me into happiness. This wasn't an ex-husband. This was clearly the god of wealth delivering himself to my door. As soon as I saw him, I immediately looked around. When no one was paying attention, I pulled him into the room. Why do you come through the door? Absolutely don't use the main door. If someone recognizes you as the emperor, they'll definitely be scared and run away. If you affect my business, then forget the back door. I won't even open the dog door for you. He brushed snow off his shoulder, leaning on the bed with a small smile, seeming completely unconcerned about my wanting to make him crawl through a dog hole. Alexander suddenly gave me an exquisite golden key. The key had flowing light patterns carved on it, with a small night pearl inlaid on top, clearly crafted with care. Sophia, New Year's gift. I just felt it was a bit strange. New Year just passed. Why was he already preparing gifts for me? Looking down, he had already stuffed the key into my hand. Alexander paused. I also want to ask you for a gift. I thought after this period of persistence, he finally couldn't take it anymore, and was about to say nonsense words to coax me into the palace. Who knew Alexander just wanted me to embroider the character of Cloud on his clothes like before? In the past, you used to tease me, saying the character you embroidered was a protective charm for me. So every time I wore it outside, thanks to your blessing, I returned safely. He also said, next year's new clothes, you still haven't embroidered characters for me. The past was the past, but Alexander is now the emperor. Wherever he goes, guards follow. I just felt he was very childish. Despite this, looking at the golden key, I still took out needle and thread. Alexander took the opportunity to gain an inch and 1 foot. Tomorrow I'll bring a few more. Just embroider them on the dragon robes. I reached out to pinch him, scolding, Your Majesty. That action carried naturalness like flowing clouds and water, as if suddenly returning to those peaceful days in Lotus Village. I suddenly realized this and withdrew my serious expression, wanting to pull my hand back, but was grabbed by Alexander once more. His slender fingers threaded through my fingers, gripping tighter, not giving me any chance to retreat. The bright daylight from outside shone in, making the room warm. Alexander in the illusory halo tilted his head to look at me, his expression as usual. Suddenly I felt if I didn't do something, I really wouldn't be worthy of her words. Your Majesty. He took advantage to embrace my waist, pressing me down on the couch. At the end of that day, Alexander was kicked off the couch by me. After he left, I discovered his character. Embroidered robe had also been left here. This person was really careless. With his personality, he'd probably shamelessly come back for it the next day. But several days later, Alexander remained silent without appearing. Abnormal things must have demons. My heart suddenly had a bad premonition. Waiting several more days, Alexander still had no movement. Asking people to investigate in the palace also yielded no news. Right at this time, rumors arose in the capital. A strange plague was rampaging in Mainin County. Many people died. Only then did I remember more than half the people who migrated from Lotus Village had gone to Mainin County. In my past life, this great plague outbreak was fierce with no cure. Without medicine and food support, Lotus Village people tried to hold on until their last breath. Only those who've experienced death once can truly understand that despair. Though Mainin County was more prosperous than Lotus Village, it was still a plague after all. Who knows how long they could resist? I'm afraid with the wider area, more common people would suffer. Precisely because I'd experienced that hellish torture, I couldn't just stand by and watch. I immediately, without hesitation, spent most of my fortune over